Pay close attention. The news you're about to see is fulfilling Bible prophecy.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you news as it relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yeshua Hawkins. Well, of course, we're going to talk a little bit about monkeypox. Back in the news again. We know it was real big, outbreak last summer. Well, CDC is warning about it again this year. We're going to talk also about the NATO is making moves to kind of get into the territory of Japan. China's not liking that very much, and they're also voicing their concerns. But first, we're going to talk about what the CDC is warning the population, that is, of a resurgence of mpox, formerly known as monkeypox. Since last summer, 30,395 people have contracted the virus in the United States. According to Dr. Karen Kruger, several patients treated at Chicago's Northwest Memorial Hospital who've recently contracted the virus has also received both doses of the Jynneos vaccine. But so far, no one has required hospitalization.
Now, the CDC is warning of an mpox resurgence with Pride Month starting in June and is calling on men who have sex with men and other people at high risk to get vaccinated. The CDC estimates that only about 23% of the 1.6 million high-risk Americans have been fully vaccinated. Now, 3 studies released found that the 2-dose vaccine is 66 to 88% effective at preventing an mpox infection, while with only 1 dose, that number drops to 36 to 75%.
Well, mpox is spread primarily through skin-to-skin contact, with symptoms being rashes, scabs, and flu-like symptoms, but it is rarely fatal.
Well, the debt in the U.S. is astronomical at $31.4 trillion. Now, on what you might ask? Well, decades of government spending on things like Medicaid, military spending, food stamps, roads, education, the environment, and of course some other things. What the government spent was far more than what it brought in to pay for those programs. Now, at its current number, it would require every man, woman, and child to pitch in $94,000 to pay off the U.S. national debt, the largest debt in the world.
Wow. Well, in the year 2000, the debt only equaled 36% of the U.S. economy, but it shot up and it is now 98% of what we are projected to produce this year in 2023. And at this rate, the debt is forecasted to be twice the U.S. economy, that is, what the U.S. produces and makes, GDP and so forth, in 30 years. So in 30 years, wow, it's going to be twice what we actually bring energetically.
Right, and it tripled there, from the 36% to the 98, but doubling is, we're not going to catch up on that rate.
Oh, no.
Well, we're now going to turn to our field correspondent, Larry McGee, who has been covering the de-dollarization. Of course, we know countries are trying to ditch the dollar. The U.S. is not going to be liking that, of course, but countries are making plans, and Iraq is making some pretty bold moves with their plans. So, Larry, what's the latest there in Iraq?
The battle and maneuvers to seize and lead the reins of the New World Order are still proceeding and picking up steam. Money is at the root of all of the activities and endeavors of the system, so that an increase in economic warfare was both foreseeable and inevitable. The battle is being billed as the West against the rest, with the rest including other leading powers such as Russia and China, who are now attempting to wrest power, economic and otherwise, from the United States. The multipolar maneuver aimed at undermining American financial hegemony is being referred to as de-dollarization, where an increasing amount of nations are attempting to free themselves from heavy reliance and dependence upon the U.S. dollar. The complaint is that the currency is inflated and weaponized, as an example, for accusations that nations like Iraq have provided channels for laundering and filtering U.S. dollars to nations on the American hit list like Iran. Restrictions have now been levied against Iraq to limit the amount of dollars flowing into and around the country. This has produced a steep rise in prices in the nation and a significant uptick in public angst as well. In response, Baghdad is now moving to ditch the dollar in preference for its own national currency, which is the dinar. Citizens who persist in using the dollar will incur stiff fines. Other countries throughout the region have been paying close attention, and many of them, including Saudi Arabia, have begun taking preemptive efforts to shield their economies from American caprice by establishing new payment models predicated on alternative currencies. For IPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Katan Jeff, back to you.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of other countries are jumping on board with that BRICS group, as many have made their requests known, including Iraq, to, like you said, or Larry said, get away from the U.S. dollar, that petrodollar, which seems to be the major currency in the world.
Right, and like Iraq, they're actually, wouldn't call it forced, but they're very much persuading their people to not use the dollar.
Now, those penalties could put a lot of hurting on the public. Well, Iran unveiled the newest member of its ballistic missiles, which is sure to increase tensions between itself, the nation of Israel, and Western countries. Officials say the fourth generation of the Khorram Shaft missile has a range of 2,000 kilometers and can carry a 1,500 kiloton warhead, which means Israel is within its range.
Now, the video footage claims to show a successful test launch of the new missile. Now, Iran's missile program is said to be developed in part as a response to Western sanctions, which prevent the country from buying modern aircraft or attack aircraft. And Katan, you can bet Israel is not liking that, because at one time they said that's their red line, that they did not want Iran to be able to develop that capability of shooting, getting those missiles into their country.
For sure. Well, as world leaders and, of course, other officials are gathered in Japan for the most recent G7 summit, they vowed to get tough on Russia once again. While visiting memorials and shrines in Hiroshima, UK Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, told reporters he had a message for President Putin. Sunak said, quote, "My message to Putin is straightforward. We're not going away. Russia has conducted an illegal and unprovoked act of aggression by invading Ukraine, and Russia needs to know we and other countries remain steadfast in our resolve to support Ukraine."
Well, a war of words ensued as the Russian president addressed by video call to the Council of Inter-Ethnic Relations. Now, Putin sent this message to the collective West, who he accused of attempting to divide the Russian people. He said, quote, "We see the extent of aggression, external pressure that is being exerted on Russia and our entire society now. Practically the entire arsenal, economic, military, political, informational, is directed against us, and the most powerful anti-Russian propaganda has been deployed," he said.
Well, new sanctions were announced against Russia, including a limit of trade in Russian diamonds, but experts say it won't really starve Russia's war machine. And as the G7 talks come to an end, the United States President Joe Biden promises the group is committed to supporting the Ukrainian government and people. President Biden added that the U.S. would also be sending more military aid to the tune of $375 million, there again adding to our national debt.
Absolutely. Well, President Zelensky had at one point made it sound like the city of Bakhmut had fallen to Russian forces, but then later clarified in a statement saying, "Now our people are accomplishing a very important mission. They are now in Bakhmut. I will not share where exactly, but it proves that Bakhmut is not occupied by the Russian Federation."
While on a tour of the Hiroshima Memorial Park, the Ukrainian president compared the ruins of the Japanese city to Bakhmut. He said that the city will be reconstructed just like Hiroshima was after World War II.
Well, in other news, NATO is planning to open a liaison office in Japan. This would be the first of its kind in Asia and would be established to facilitate conciliations in the region. According to reports, the NATO office will have the ability to enable discussions with NATO security partners like South Korea, Australia, and New Zealand.
Well, after Japan acknowledged the plan by NATO, a Chinese foreign ministry spokesperson said the Asia-Pacific region does not welcome this plan. The Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has said the opening of such an office does not indicate any plans for Japan to join NATO.
But of course, as we've talked about, China's not going to like the fact that NATO is that close.
That's right.
Well, China has for many years been working towards its goal of changing the, quote, New World Order. Its efforts to form coalitions with neighboring states who are not in line with the democratic values of the Western countries is apparent. Now, Taiwan fears if the Chinese government succeeds, their country and others like it will lose their ability to be sovereign nations. Please watch this news report aired on AM Agenda by Sky News Australia.
Well, China is assembling a coalition of rogue states to upend the world order, That's according to Taiwan's foreign minister, who's told Sky News China's efforts threaten the future of all democracies.
Minutes before our interview, news broke 38 Chinese military planes were detected near Taiwan over a 24-hour period. Days earlier, China wrapped a week of intensive, large-scale drills around Taiwan, simulating an invasion. It's part of a relentless pressure campaign and further raises fears over what may come next.
Are we destined for war here?
I certainly hope not. At this moment, even though we see that the tension has been rising and the conflict seems to be more likely and peace is less likely to attain, but we need to do everything we can to prevent war from happening. Well, I would say that it might not be the best way to go. The Chinese military force is rather capable. I think it's international public knowledge right now. And for a country to defend itself is not to build up something similar to what China is building up. I think we need to invest in smart strategy. We need to invest in asymmetric strategy, and at the same time, we need to increase our self-defense determination. And we have been doing all this.
A similar build-up is taking place in Japan, South Korea, and of course Australia, as China builds a bloc of nations willing to support its agenda.
We're concerned that more and more leftist countries or some rogue states that are aligned with China, and they present to the international community a new problem. What China and Russia together represent something else. They want to destroy the rules-based international order.
If threats turn into attacks, Taiwan will need allies to assist in its fight with an overwhelmingly more powerful foe. The United States has committed tens of billions of dollars in weapons and other military support to Taipei, and President Biden has said US troops would join a war over Taiwan, but the White House walked back those comments, keeping in line with its official strategic ambiguity policy, while the French president recently suggested others aren't certain to join a war over Taiwan.
Who do you think will actually fight alongside Taiwan if push comes to shove? What assurances do you have?
Well, this is a very good question. A lot of people are debating on strategic ambiguity or strategic clarity. But to us, we know our own responsibility. Taiwan has to defend itself. The people have to defend the Taiwan, this country. And we are determined to defend ourselves. And we are not asking other countries to fight for Taiwan.
A battle against Chinese interference rages. The foreign minister says China is already trying to manipulate presidential elections here, scheduled for January. But he's not concerned about a potential change for Taiwan's biggest backer.
We always have very good relations with the United States, no matter which political party is in power.
Donald Trump's a friend of Taiwan?
When President Trump was in office, we had very good relations with the National Security Council. We had very good relations with the State Department. We have very good relations with Defense Department and other government institutions. So we are not concerned at all for anyone to be in office in the United States.
Given Chinese actions and alarming predictions, Taiwan may need as many friends as it can get.
Well, Katana, looks like Taiwan is hoping to get the U.S.'s support if China would attack. but it sounds like they're also very ready, if necessary, to defend their country on their own.
That's right, and the tensions continue to be heightened in the Pacific area, that region, or the South China Sea, depending on who you were talked to, and China is definitely staying on alert with the U.S. involvement in China, and of course, like we reported earlier, NATO's involvement with Japan.
Right, and remember that Russia, many of the experts said that how Russia handles the situation with Ukraine is really kind of a precursor for China here in Taiwan, seeing what mistakes were made and who joined in to help them and so forth. So we'll definitely see where Taiwan is going from here.
That's right.
Well, if you'd like to learn more about these stories, contact the House of Yahweh. When you do, don't forget to request your free copy of the monthly newsletter and Prophetic Word magazine. Here's how. To
contact the House of Yahweh, you can write them at the House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can call them at 1-800-613-9494. Visit them by going to any of their websites at yahweh.com, YisraelHawkins.com, and Yahweh'sBranch.com. You can visit our website by going to ypnnews.com. You can email the House of Yahweh at info@yahweh.com. And for all calls outside the United States, please dial the number on your screen. And of course, as always, don't forget the Yisrael Says and Ask Yisrael programs, the best aids online to assist you in studying and understanding of your scriptures. And you can find those by going to YisraelSays.com and AskYisrael.com.
Well, don't go anywhere. Up next is another classic message from Yisrael Hawkins. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
And I'm Katan Alexander.
Thanks for watching.